Hello and welcome to the Hard Questions. I'm Solomon Serwanja. The president has backtracked on his directive that all advertising to government and indeed its agencies should be only channeled through the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation and the New Vision. This follows several meetings between the high echelons of power and executive members of the National Association of Broadcasters, NAB. What does that mean for our independence as the media? And according to the statement that was issued out of that meeting, the media was choking with taxes and salaries in arrears. And on this episode, I'm excited to be hosting the Secretary General of the National Association of Broadcasters, Joseph Beyanga. Joseph, thank you so much for accepting to be on the show today.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here with you.
All right, let's get into it. Joe, the president certainly made a decision to say, look, I'm cracking the whip. I'm not happy with the way the private sector in the media space is performing. And therefore, he directed and he said that there will be consequences to the permanent secretaries and those that are responsible for not implementing the directive. And as a result, money was cut short. The media had to get to its knees to go to the president to beg. So let's start there. What really informed the president's decision to give this directive? Let's start there.
Had to go on our knees?
You did.
We went walking. We wrote a letter. We met the ministers. We met technocrats. Nobody was on our knees. We fight on our feet.
But yeah, you went actually on your knees because then you had to go and ask for the president literally to say, please revoke this directive. Because the media has to survive. You need revenue. Government is the biggest advertiser. And so I'm rightly so that you went begging for the president.
No, it was on a principle. It was on a principle of fair competition. It was on a principle of open economy, whereby when the economy was open back in the 90s, it was the government competing against private entities. So it's private media, it's government media competing for government advertising. This is not a question of free money. There's no free money. It's money given to the best person offering a service. It's the government looking for a service just like any other private company, advertising services. And not every media house will get that. There is a competitive process through which this is acquired. So it's not that government was giving us free money and now the government has decided to give the money only to UBC. Let's clarify that. It's advertising given on merit, no handouts. We're not talking about handouts, and this is why.
Well, the president said you can deal with that. I have UBC and New Vision, so they can advertise. We can pass advertising through them.
This is public money. Public funds have ways in which they are governed. It's not wake up today, wake up tomorrow. No. They are procedures. Let's talk about principles of good governance. Let's talk about how good society lives, how good society operates. Let's talk about the countries, the societies we aspire to be. Let's talk about the Uganda we aspire to see. That's what we are talking about. So when the letter came out, we said, hey, Mr. President, you are preaching the principles of free economy. You're creating a monopoly. He said, okay. Me, when I was advised, actually, this is what happened in the meeting. He said, to paraphrase what he said, I was actually doing this to help UBC. Because they came, they told me they are not making money, they have debts, they have ABCD. But now I've listened to you guys and I've got more information and I've actually, let me say, the whole media, I'm hearing you're not making money, so it's okay. Let's go back to the way we were operating before. I will get other ways of supporting UBC.
Let's face it, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Clearly, in that meeting, according to the letter that the president wrote, he said that some media houses were promoting sectarianism, bad politics, and all that. And what that means is that will have an impact on the role of media or of independence in the way media houses are run. There will be heavy censorship because you will be mindful of not annoying the president in himself, because then what if he actually ties the tap again?
No. Solomon, you and me have been in the trenches for some time, in the newsroom, out, in the boardroom, everywhere. We know there are many laws, many guidelines, many regulations on how the issues the president talked about are addressed. We have a 2013 Uganda Communications Act, and we have the Journalism Act. We have so many laws which govern the issues that you are saying that the president hinted on and all that. So if the media is breaking a law here, if one media house is not performing according to the standards, there are ways in which it's addressed. That's why Media Council was set up. That's why we have UCC. That's why we are asking the president, we need the media tribunal. So you can't say that the president had issued guidelines and he had taken in the letter against secretarism, against, no, nothing like that. Far from it. Let's address the facts.
And the fact is the independence of the press. How can Ugandans really trust that the media is going to be independent of the executive when we see that the president can actually open and close the taps as and when he wants because he knows he holds the budget, and therefore you will be second-guessing yourself on the quality of journalism that you give to the public?
I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the early 90s, 1994, I think 94, when the government said no advertising in Daily Monitor. Did Daily Monitor back off?
It was choking financially.
But did they back off from the independent journalism?
They kept doing some good journalism.
And you and me are a product of that. So are you saying the current media houses, the current people running media houses don't have the spine? If they lacked the spine before, I don't think this will make them stronger or weaker. Those who had the spine, they still have their spine. The media houses, which, you know, for a fact, by the way, we need to demystify a few things. How much of government advertising contribute to advertising? Yes, the government is still the biggest advertiser. Yeah? How many media houses get advertising from the government? We don't have the time to go into all those facts, but we just treat the government as any other advertiser. We've seen the media do stories about all the big advertisers, about the breweries, about the telcos, about the banks and all that. Did the advertising stop? So let's separate the two things. There's one, what we call public information done in public interest. And that's what I'm more interested in talking about. That's the media we need. The media which will fight for good governance. The media which will fight for environment. The media which will fight against corruption and all that. That information is not so much tied to advertising or no advertising. Hold it there. We've been witnessing the latest episode of digital number plates. And we see how that has panned out. We see the role that the Daily Monitor has played. We see the role that New Vision has played. We see nobody's holding back because these are issues that affect you and me. And hey, you know, there was somebody who was pointing out something interesting. He said, look, what the New Vision is running in their editorial is actually at conflict with what they are running on their advertorials. Exactly, that's what it is. An advert comes looking for an audience. An audience exists because you're putting out good content.
Yeah, but a media that needs to survive because of advertising. Let's face it, Joe, you and I have been in the newsroom for long enough to know that when editorial decisions are made, there are so much things that we actually consider, including, well, we know the ethics of journalism and everything, but when all that is done, there are other things that we consider. If we put out this story, yes, it has all the elements of good journalism, the impact of this could actually be gross. And we've seen heavy censorship within media houses themselves. The editorial team makes decisions to drop some stories which may be critical of the state because of the repercussions that would actually come, even when the stories have all the elements of good journalism. Those decisions are made, especially when you're worried that the state will actually close their taps on you. So I'm questioning again.
Especially,
do we still have media independence amidst the state and President Museveni opening and closing the taps as and when he wants?
Especially when you're worried that if you put out this content, it will compromise the security of the nation. It will compromise someone's private security. It will compromise somebody's privacy. That's when censorship comes in. I'm not talking about somebody holding back because an advertiser is going to pull the plug. There are media houses which do that, truth be told. But those media houses, when we come to talking about the credible media houses, are they one of them? We're talking about credibility. We're talking about good journalism. We are talking about the principles which people use to make decisions. So let's not use principles adopted by compromised media houses as a standard. We should be talking about the standard without forgetting to address the reality.
You see, this is why I'm asking, and this is why this topic is very important, because the media is supposed to mirror exactly what society is.
Yes.
There are some fears that because of, the state's interference in the independence of the media, that mirror is shattered and therefore does not give a true reflection of what really society is.
Okay, that I understand, but let's first put one thing to rest. Yeah, this government advertising has existed for as long as independent media has been here. All right? Yes, there's one media house, Daily Monitor, which has suffered before, and others suffered before. I think Weekly Topic suffered that before. But, so you are saying for the last 30 years, odd years, media has been compromised because of advertising? I would say no. So it's not that government advertising is a new thing that has just been thrown at the media. So if we are talking about issues of media independence, issues of media credibility, we need to address those ones without forgetting one fundamental issue: media viability. How is the media doing? What's the health status of the media today?
How does it survive?
How does it survive? If we start from there, now we can move.
With that comes a lot of give and takes. I have a business to run, I have salaries to pay, but I also have journalism to do. And therefore, the editorial normally clashes with the advertising. Classic example, you do a big story, an investigation on, maybe, and I mean, yes, I've seen, media doing really good stories and big stories, but then you get to second guess yourself. I'm talking about heavy censorship.
I'm talking about the realities that are facing the media today. I'm talking about the big question of media viability. Let me give you a few numbers. By 2020, this is a global, 50% of advertising went online. Now, before that, advertising revenues and budgets and all that used to go to radio, TV, newspaper. Now there was a new kid, and the new kid scooped out 50%. This is global. And this 50%, where is it going? It's going to Google, Facebook, and the likes. Do they put out content? No, they do not. They just aggregate your content. But they're taking your cake. Who is producing this content? This content is produced, by the way, let's just give an example. When you see something showing up on your timeline, Solomon has tweeted or Joe Walker has tweeted an accident, 5 people feared dead. Where do we go first to verify? First, is NBS doing anything? Check on NBS. Let me see. What about NTV? Let me go to Daily Monitor. And then after you've confirmed, you go ahead and... So we're still counting on the traditional media houses for the credibility of information. For information we can trust. For information that we use in making decisions. When you are talking about the issue of digital number plates, is the trending issue. It would have just come, slid, all people would be now paying $750 for a new number plate, and $150, all of us would be queuing up to change our number plates before time. But the media picked up the story and exposed what was happening. And then people went back and said, the first person to raise an alarm, interestingly, was the tax collector. And saying, look, you people, what you are talking about, I'm not understanding. When it takes effect on 1st July, what happens to the new cars in the bonds? Are we ready to get this thing done? You've been seeing them coming to Parliament. You've watched them, you've listened to them, you've read about them saying, this thing, nobody was consulted. The tax collector coming out saying, oh, this, is it a 450% increment, is unfair. It's because of what the media did. Now, that's the media that you and me need to talk about That's the media that we need to talk about its viability, the one that we need to protect. I'm not saying we should stop social media and all. No. People need to have their freedom of expression. People need to have their freedom. And actually, the social media increases people's space of freedom of expression and all that. So we need it. We need thriving. People need to talk about issues that affect them. But we still need the credible media, the media which verifies the facts, the media which is fair, balanced, and accurate to give us that information. Then we can go and make noise.
I know long enough that there's so many people who are critics of this government that have been blocked from going back on different radio stations, television stations, because the state has had an influence that don't host so-and-so, don't host so-and-so. There are so many stories that come through the newsroom and you're like, nah, this one, no. Sometimes we see the invisible hand of the state infiltrating through media houses and therefore managing its editorial system in a way. But let's move away from that. Do you think that the media still does its civic duty of holding government accountable, pushing for the good governance that you were talking about? Does the media still hold that backbone to stand up against the state and point a finger to the president, to the executive, to the judiciary? Do you still believe in that?
If I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't be here. If I didn't believe in it, we wouldn't have pushed the principle to the president to say, look, this is not fair. If I didn't believe in that, I wouldn't be in the media. And that doesn't take away the question you're asking, the question that the viewer who's following this conversation is asking in their head, and actually the perception that they have. Does the media still do what they are meant to do? It's a yes and no. And let me answer you with some background. In Uganda, we have a very interesting mix of the media. Let's look at the media terrain. Let's go to radio. You have 320 radio stations. Who owns them? Who runs them? And for what purpose? A huge chunk of our radios are owned by politicians.
Many of them are aligning with the NRM, which is the government in power.
A huge chunk is owned by the churches for preaching the gospel. It's another audience, it's another congregation. And then very few are owned by people who are into media business. Now, the politicians are basically doing politics, and radio or TV is one of the mediums through which they reach their voters. The church is reaching their congregation. Then the few media houses are doing the job of the media. And now those few media houses, not all of them are doing what the media is supposed to be doing because of either self-censorship, due to the way they are owned. You go into the ownership structure and all that, you find along the way they will just say, no, drop that story. But we still have some credible media houses doing some good journalism, including even the government-owned media houses. I'll tell you, New Vision still does some good journalism. You saw what they were doing in the Iron Sheet scandal. I think the story started somewhere, between Monitor and New Vision. At times we keep debating on who broke the story. So it continues. But New Vision, I think, did some good work on the Iron Sheet scandal. So now that's what media does. So a few media houses are still pushing. Those are few which are still, there are few media houses which are in media business. Not every media house is in media business. Other media houses are in political business, others are in church business.
So let's talk about the media viability that you talked about. There was a study that was published by, Aga Khan, the Aga Khan Foundation, the Aga Khan Media Center of Excellence, that spoke about the sustainability of the media industry on advertising. And of course, that has been questioned on the independence of the media, but because you've elaborated it to detail, what other alternative funding models can the media adopt to be able to survive and present independence. For example, when you enjoy, you've traveled across the world, many of the media houses, the moment you visit them, the first thing they say is, we are independent of government advertising. So seemingly to say, look, we're independent and we speak journalism. We speak independent journalism. I think that has always come out in many of the media houses you've visited across the world, not so much in Africa, but elsewhere. What are those alternative business models that we adopt to keep our heads above the water, even without government advertising?
By the way, interestingly, some of them who they say are independent of government advertising, they are, to some extent, using the government infrastructure. They are using government subsidies. They are getting exemptions and all that. So that's a conversation we don't need to go to. But I think we need to reach a point where we say, look, I'll answer your question with an example. When we go downtown Kampala, when we are in the city of Kampala, we have something we know as Bagaga Kwagarana. These are guys running competing businesses, but these are guys who sit together and support each other. Somebody said, small people compete, big people collaborate. One of the easiest and one of the sure ways that we need to adopt to survive is media houses need to collaborate. You don't collaborate, you die. Somebody was giving an example of an iPhone. What Apple does is design the phone, and then you pick. You don't have to be good at everything, but make sure you work with people who are good at specific things. Work with the best at everything. So, look, we don't have to be everywhere to do a story about story in government medicines. Get the concept. Say, okay, we need to talk to somebody in West Nile to track the activity between the Uganda and South Sudan border. There's a journalist based in West Nile. They can do that story for you. You don't have to travel there. And the government has set up the infrastructure of the internet and NITA, the backbone cable, that if it works, you are able to send the data across, you get it here, and you put your story together, high quality, without having to travel every corner. Collaboration. The power of collaboration is one of the sure ways the media needs to stay on. And this is why, look, what the media puts out is not just something that you are going to get and chew and it's only you who feel satisfied. No, it's a public good. Information is a public good which needs to be protected by everyone. So Solomon, the first person who should protect information is not the media house. Who should protect the media houses to make sure they are putting out that information which is a public good, information that will make people, give people better information to make decisions on good governance and accountability and all that, should be the public first. It's not the apps company which is now saying, hey, look, media houses have given you a platform, you can aggregate your information here, yes, and you get, when you go down to revenue share, all the money stays with the apps guys.
Yeah.
You get only 20%. But those guys are not interested in protecting your information. It's you and me, it's the public. It is a public good.
It is a public good. You've talked about collaboration. It's just a paper thing.
It's not a paper thing.
Give me one project that has been in Uganda done out of collaboration between media houses.
Did you see what we did during COVID? We did.
I saw
you participated.
I saw the whole broadcasting thing.
What message was that? The message was, let's unite and fight COVID. On your own, you won't survive. We need each other. Let me give you another example of collaboration.
And who was behind that?
No, it was NAB.
Without a government input?
Nope.
Okay.
Government was a participant.
Okay. Joe, let's talk about the model of...
Let's talk about collaboration and putting out a public good. I'll give you an example of a story which was done by a journalist of NBS with the BBC. And it was tracking the government medicine being stolen by government workers and being sold on the black market. And that documentary, I'm sure, has changed so many things, has changed the way the government tracks and supplies medicine to hospitals. That's collaboration. That journalist is you.
Yeah, but that we haven't.
And I'm not saying this to make you feel
no,
good.
no, no,
I'm just giving you an example.
but we've not seen that in local media.
But-
I'm looking forward to a dream where New Vision will collaborate with NTV or with the Daily Monitor. And we've seen it. We've seen the Panama Papers. We've seen all these big investigations are out of real collaboration. I don't see that, Joe. But hopefully you will lead the conversation. Joe, I wanted to direct
I don't
you.
have to lead the conversation. Let me give you another example. And this one, sorry to drag you. You and me, when you worked at NTV, and I was at KFM, and
Yeah.
we are so many products, so many brands in one company. But you guys, you sat at NTV, you did your own stuff.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the
Yeah.
guys at Daily Monitor are doing and KFM.
Yeah.
We all ran a newsroom, and at some point you'd have Daily Monitor, NTV, KFM.
Publishing different things, but sometimes they would come together.
But right now, it's one newsroom. So maybe as we sort out our media houses one by one, then we will start thinking as media houses, how do we get there? Let me take a journey of 1,000 miles, and this is not a cliche, begins with one step. Okay. And I've walked them all.
Okay. Joe, let's talk about the subscription model, online subscription model to raise revenue. And you talked about media viability. Is it working?
It's not working right now. Let me tell you, the monies that are coming from digital platforms can't pay anybody's bills. But it's the future.
Okay.
And we have to be ready for the future. How do you get ready for the future? Right now, every media house, if they've not yet done it, this is what we need to focus on. The content you're putting out on because content remains the same. It is still the same old good journalism that we've done, that we've been doing, that we are doing. What changes is the distribution channels. We just need to rewire our thinking and be ready that when we put out content, we are purposing it and repurposing it to make sure we are able to distribute it across all platforms.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we used to buying one newspaper and we're sharing all throughout this time, even subscribing as little as maybe 10,000.
Subscribing for the Daily Monitor or the e-paper is 1,000 shillings.
Per?
Just 1,000 shillings per day. Per day.
Joe, let's gear up and talk about the aspect of remuneration of journalists. I think it has come up very much, and most of the times NAB has kept quiet on the remuneration of journalists. You find journalists who go, spend the day in the sun, do the stories, and they're earning 5,000 per story, maybe 10,000 or 15,000. If your story makes it to the front page, that comes to about 30,000. And then we are fighting for independent journalism. And then, you're having a crop of journalists who are not paid. They have arrears of about 5 months. So let's talk about the remuneration of journalists. Does NAB care about how journalists are remunerated, or it's just profit-oriented?
So if NAB doesn't care, what's NAB's product? And I'm talking about media houses. What's our product? Our product is content. Who puts together content? It's the journalists you're talking about. They are at the heart of our product. Do we care? Yes, we do. Are we doing the best? No. Why? Many reasons. One of the things we've been pushing, and we are emphasizing to our members, and I'm glad that the regulator has also picked it up, just make sure you have contracts with other people that are working with you. There are so many. One of the highest complaints I received for the time I've been at NAB is journalists calling you, inboxing you, man, the man is not paying us. We've gone for 5 months. I was like, why is it? It's like, send me a copy of your contract. And I'm calling him up. No, he never gave us contracts. And then we are fighting for good governance. We can't fight for ourselves. Get yourself, make sure I don't offer you a service without a contract. That's a starting point.
Maybe you're taking advantage of their vulnerability.
No. What? That they can't speak for themselves?
They want a job, they want to earn, so you lure them, you give them some work, and then you say contract will come later but they are vulnerable, then you take advantage of them.
The reality is, yes, I hear you, and very many people are doing that. Remember the model I talked, remember the style of ownership, the type of ownership that I talked about. The church, the politician, whereby you find the politician has a brother who doesn't know the basics of journalism, is the one running the media house, and then he's employing the cousin, the other. I mean, gundi jangu tukole. So those people definitely, when they hire you, they think they're doing you a favor. But look, they're not doing you a favor. You're offering a service, demand for a contract. You can offer them jaribu for 1 month as you're telling them, this is what I can do. After that, demand for a contract. And when you sign that contract, it's enforceable. I mean, we know the basics of a contract and what is enforceable and what's not enforceable. Anything written that stipulates what you do and what you're supposed to be paid should be enforceable.
But you see, as NAB, then you need to push that down the throat of your members, that every member who belongs to the association should be able to provide contracts to every journalist who they are working with.
That we are trying to push it to NAB members, but we can't enforce it. We can only preach it. We can't enforce it. And then two, really, if you've gone to school and you know the basics, demand for a contract. Come on, guys, we are not wheelbarrow pushers. Don't allow, you know, most of the time, if you have no value to yourself, yeah, they will, any tag attached to you will be your value.
We're talking about a vulnerable person.
We're talking about a graduate. We're talking about adults. We are talking about people who are informing you to make a good decision. We are talking about informed people. Come on. We're not talking about, you know, people like to say, the Bible says, but it's not in the Bible. This thing which has been pushed around over and over again, that God helps those who help themselves. It's not in the Bible, but it's a good principle. If you really don't start by asking a contract and signing a contract, how do we help you? Now, you tell me, Swamo. When we go back, we say, okay, he owes me for 6 months. Okay, when did you start working? Kata, you see, I started when the rain was heavy, and you remember the time when Nachubo channel was cut off? No, who will trace that? Who will remember that? Give us something to work with. Give us something.
But you should enforce it as an association.
Now, how do we enforce it?
Because they're members, and that's the reason why the association exists, to sort of measure up to the standards of good journalism. And that means that as an entity, you have to push it down the throats of your members to implement the bare minimum.
You know, one of the things which we've done, and this was born out of an international program and gave birth to Uganda Media Sector Working Group. And Uganda Media Sector Working Group has a huge group that brings together all the editors, the senior editors of our media houses, the Uganda Editors Guild. Now, the Editors Guild deals with literally every journalist, most journalists, because the senior editors sit on that Editors Guild. Now, we're trying to see how do we get these things to trickle down, because most of the people who tend to be victimized are the foot soldier journalists, the guys who go and pick the content. They're the ones who are paid the least, they're the ones who are not paid, they're the ones who... So we're trying to see how do we work together with the Editors Guild to make sure some of these things are implemented. Look, Solomon, I've been in the media for 25 years. You know, this September reminds me of the time when I walked into the media in '98 as a young kiddo. and Radio 1 just trusted in me. And you know, and they told me, we'll be paying you this much for every day worked. And I was paid for every single day that I worked. It was clear from the go. I don't want somebody, a young kid coming from the university with the dreams, with the ambitions, their dreams to be shattered by a crook running a media house. And this is what I would tell them. Please ask for that contract. Now, let's first say, even if they give you a contract where they're paying you 2,000 shillings per story, but let it be paid. Then after that, we can talk about how do we improve it. But give us something to improve.
Yeah, I hear you. So speaking from experience, and we're going to leave this a bit. Speaking from experience, you know, where I started in the media, in the media, I'm not named media house. I've, you know, because of passion, I volunteered 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You know, okay. You're not earning. You're there. So because you're passionate, a lot of this journalism is done because you're passionate about this. Someone has given you an opportunity to be on TV or to be on radio or to write, you know. So because of that, then, you know, you work, then you start to say, please now start, and, you know, and all that. You know how every one of us have entered through the media house. Some of them have come through, yes, through recruitment. Others have come through internship, and then, because you're passionate, you're trying to get into the system. They say, keep there. We are trying. We are talking to them. Once an opportunity comes up, and year one goes, year two goes, year three, and I'm speaking out of experience. And Joe, you've seen this.
I've seen it. And by the way, I've been blessed that in my 25 years, I think I've had I could be one of the few individuals that has had the highest number of people come in as interns and go on to be on-air personalities and go on to be full-time journalists. And one of the things which I normally do, even for interns, however short it may be, have a written document, have a written understanding before you go on air. This is why. And this is for the benefit of the media house. If somebody is on air and they make a mistake, what puts the two of you together? Because if you go on air and you have a contract, by the time you sign that contract, it stipulates the do's and the don'ts. That contract protects a media house, that contract protects an individual, that contract protects the media we are talking about. So look, we're hungry for opportunities. When we get opportunities, secure the opportunity. Without a contract, that opportunity is not secured. You may be looking for cheap labor, yes. If you negotiate a small rate, yes, secure your interest as a business. Come on, people. If we're interested in this industry and we still want to make money from this industry, we have to protect it.
All right, Joe, let's stick to the welfare of journalists a little bit. Let's talk about journalists on the front line. And I've been there so many times. Journalists who are beaten, battered by the police, by the military. During elections, we saw what a gruesome experience it was for the people who covered the front line. When we expected NAP to stand up and defend their journalists and speak up against the military and the police that was committing all these, gruesome brutality upon the journalists who are on the front line covering elections, what we saw is you organized the football match. What a shame.
Wow, what a wow. I hear what a shame. So, Solomon, if you're talking about diplomacy, if you're talking about engagement, if you're talking about frosty relations, how do you start talking? You start talking by throwing stones at each other?
Joe, we're having people beaten.
Solomon.
We're having people bleeding. We have people who have lost their careers, people who are limping up to now. The least you'd expect from media houses is to protect you and therefore stand up and you at least be seen to be doing something, not playing football matches.
I just would like to help you clear the fog, and then we go to the issues. Before that football match happened,
You just put out a statement as NAB, we condemn in the highest way possible.
the same statement that we put out got the president to reverse his directive. If you are playing a football match against Barcelona, it's not the same way you approach that same match against Vipers, against Express. You just need to know who is my opponent in this engagement. I'll tell you, before that football match, you definitely had it, and you covered it live. You had the CDF coming out to say, we are sorry for this, and it won't happen again. The CDF, General David Mohozi, hang on a second, you asked a question, let me give it to you. And then after that, he called us. He called the chairman, and the chairman called me. I remember it was 10 p.m. in the night. Said the CDF has called, and he wants to put out a statement. Should we give him platform? I said, what is he saying? He's coming to apologize for the incident that happened. I said, apologize, a CDF. I said, okay. I hadn't heard of it before. I said, let's go ahead. We had a quick chat in the NAB executive. I said, let's give them platform. After the apology, there was a letter inviting us for engagement. And we said, look, this is looking ugly. It's looking ugly on the part of UPDF. It's looking ugly on the part of the country. And you are killing us. And it's quite unfortunate when I just remember our colleague James Akena and Irene Abaro,
That's what I was saying.
Very passionate people, professional.
Irene is not going to the field anymore. Akena literally resigned his journalism.
He left. Another time we had an engagement, me and you, with him.
Yeah, exactly.
He said now he's into a car wash and
then you're thinking, so why do I put myself on the line as a journalist when my bosses actually don't
if
go the
we threw
distance?
stones at each other, it would not reverse what had happened.
Joe, you boycotted the
But-
media when the president locked the funding. You boycotted covering government events because it went to the core of your business.
I'm talking
You,
about,
you had an action, Joe. You boycotted all media functions. You blacklisted them. You literally did not cover government during the time the president had given that directive to give only advertising. What you did when your journalists were beaten was playing soccer.
So do you want to know what happened after the soccer match? The focus was on the soccer match. The soccer match was a curtain raiser. After the football match, we had an engagement with all. It's actually the first time that I've ever seen that huge number of generals in one room. And this engagement, we ended up with an MOU. But we came up with an MOU whereby media training is part of any training they do for all army officers. And the last time I had a chat with Dewa Kiki, said, it's happening. Now, we need, this is a culture which had crept up. And culture is not like a directive. Culture is part of habits which have been formed over time. You have to do a lot more to undo what had been done, because people had started, maybe the soldiers were looking at media as enemies. Maybe that's something that had been inculcated in their minds. You have to do 3 times more to undo that. It's not just a command. So it's a process. What we need to do is we need to look back, maybe 5 years down the road, and we say, hey, that was a hoax. Not now.
Maybe what you need to do is follow up on what happened to the officers who committed these aggressions. You know, officers who pulled the trigger on Ashraf Kassidi, officers who beat up Irina Ballo. The only justification or justice that these people can get were beaten. People who beat up. What happened to them? What happened to Abaine, who is caught on the record, actually doing all these things? Did NAB ever follow up to know what happened to these officers, or it's just a story that we have now forgotten?
It's not a forgotten story. None of our soldiers, none of our combatants, none of our people is forgotten. None. And I can tell you, right now, I can't just pull out facts and say, that Afande is here, that one is here, that one is here. But I'll tell you, we've engaged everybody, we've engaged the Human Rights Commission, we've engaged, there are processes. And you know, at some point, maybe some of these people may be prosecuted individually if the institutions don't own up. Because the law against torture stipulates you can pursue any single individual. And there's something we've learned over time. Ink doesn't dry. We've seen what happened recently when the court ruled that General Kari Kayihura can face up the ghosts of his torture as an individual. So, hey.
Yeah, but is NAB doing anything to that effect?
Well, it's not yet time to jubilate. Let's watch the space.
Yeah, because you see, Joe, I know you have journalists who are reporting directly under you, and I know that you are grieved when you see some things that happen to your frontliners. The only sense of satisfaction is that as a journalist, as a foot soldier, is that my boss has me. Like something must be done to pay for what I've gone through. You want to feel that my editor cares. You want to feel that my media house cares, and they have done something. And that alone can give me energy or strength to actually go back and report on the front line. The moment you don't get that sense of, am I really covered? Does my editor care? Does my media house care? Or it just cares about revenue? That sense of, do they even care? Do they care about me risking my life going on the front line? That sense of care, Joe, is very important. And NAB must be seen portraying that, if not doing that.
You know, if you talked about care, and as you're talking, my mind went back to that engagement, the first engagement we had. I think it was at the beginning, just almost around September, October, just before the presidential elections campaign started. And it was, with the COVID lockdowns and all that. And this meeting was at the headquarters of CMI. And as we were driving in past the quarter guard, you know the stages, 1, 2, 3. And then I remember guys joking, said, what if these guys called us here and they just and they just lock us in their dungeons and throw away our phones and all that? That moment, so many things run through your mind. And I was like, really, why am I here? We were there because we cared. We took that step, not because somebody was chasing us. It was not affecting the revenue as you insinuated. No, it was affecting the welfare of our people. It was not just a letter. It was driving into some place, meeting our generals, and then after that, some of us we had to sit on a joint media security committee, and you meet once every week, and sometimes you would meet in what we had grown up knowing in our media reporting and all that as safe houses. This time you have to drive in for a meeting. If you're talking about not caring, maybe we should start publicizing every single meeting we have, every single engagement, but we can't work like that. You can't build confidence and trust as you solve issues when everything has to be publicized. Some will be publicized, which need to be publicized, the progress being made, but not every engagement, not every disagreement, not every agreement. So do we care? Yes, we do, and we care very much.
Do you then think elections are here, Joe? 2026 is coming. The Electoral Commission released its roadmap. The media forms the bigger part of civic space in this country. Coming from a previous election which was highly violent, are you optimistic that these things that were committed during the 2021 general election, as a result of your negotiations and deep meetings with people, with the military, with all these other people, the things that were committed are not going to be seen again in this election?
So I'm going to answer your question with what we've grown up, what we hear, from journalism school and all that. The media is mirror of our society. You and me have witnessed so many things where you say, maybe they are broken institutions, maybe they are broken system, or maybe the system is broken by design. You see some disjointed communication coming from this angle, and that angle, and that angle. But on the aspect of, and you and me, from our engagements and our operations, there's UPDF and then there's SFC. At times they tend to speak different languages, though when you engage with them, they say, it's 4 divisions of UPDF. And then you call Afande Felix Kraj and you ask him, say, no, that is not under me, that is under SFC. So, but the main UPDF and the engagements we've had and what things they've told us that they're working on and they're doing. And even last time we had an engagement on the World Press Freedom Day. You missed that one. With Afande Dewa Keke. He really reassured us of some of the progress, some of the things they are doing right now with their security forces, with their men. We are having similar engagements, and we are moving, we are working on the foundation stage and all that with the police. So maybe as we prepare ourselves, as we get these engagements, get to understand, get the principles, terms of engagement and all that, I think if we do what we say we are doing and we intend to do, I don't think we'll have a similar scenario.
Joseph Beyanga, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.
I've been speaking to Joseph Beyanga, who is the Secretary General of the National Association of Broadcasters there, really taking a deep dive into some of the issues that come through in terms of media independence and media freedom and the better welfare of journalists. I'm Solomon Serwanja, and this is The Hard Questions.